Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity's favorite affirmation was Christ in you, or I should say the biblical word, Christ in you, the hope of glory. The realization that the God Spirit lives within you and you are one with Him is the hope of your glory and the fulfillment of the good in your life. Anyway, I thank you for that meditation. I was lost. I was still sitting there. But I appreciate it, Sharon, your work. Thank you. A few weeks ago, my daughter was here visiting, and as she's done in the past, she sort of acted as a spiritual guru for me and sort of pointing the finger in the right direction. When I was thinking of moving back to this area, I had looked at apartments that were available in Sacramento area and hadn't seen anything particular, and I hadn't made any real choice yet about coming back to Sacramento. But I was talking to my daughter on the phone, and she said, well, what about Roseville? I said, Roseville? What do you know about Roseville? Because as far as I know, she'd only been in Sacramento a couple times to visit us when we were there. And so she said, well, Roseville, that's such a lovely town. I said, Roseville is just a train stop. I mean, it's a big train yard. Because I was speaking out of my years of having been here before, when we really didn't go there that often, because that's the way we thought of it. And so anyway, she said, oh, well, you took me there. I said, I never took you to Roseville. So anyway, that was the beginning of what eventually led me to go to Roseville and to find a very wonderful place to live. And I don't belong to the Chamber of Commerce, but Roseville's a great city. If you don't know where to go for a pleasant day out, go to Roseville. Wonderful. But anyway, she did that. It was the instrument for having me look at Roseville. And also, when she was here this last time, she was in my study and looking at some of the books that I had, and she said, oh, I love this book. And she said, and there's a poem in it called The Guest House that is my favorite. And I said, oh. And so I looked at this book, and it was written by a fellow named Jelana Dim. A great man. Great man. That's why I got out my Hong Kong suit, 30-year-old Hong Kong suit, my best tie, in honor of this great man. How many of you know met this great man? Good. Because you all do really know him. He has another name that was given to him by an Englishman at the turn of the century who was interpreting some of his work. And he thought it'd be a lot easier to call him by a name of where he lived. And he lived in a part of Iran that was known as Rome. And so he said, let's call him Rumi.
Oh.
How many of you heard of Rumi? Yeah. Rumi is probably, no, I would say unquestionably, the most famous poet in the world. Because when we go to our schools and study poetry, we usually learn about the great Western poets. And probably today they cover Rumi too. But in some parts of the world, Rumi's the only poet in their mind. So worldwide, unquestionably, Rumi is the most famous of all poets in the world. When he died, it was a tribute to his soul that 3 of the world's major religions claimed him as their own and said he should be buried here in our churchyard or our temple or at our mosque, because he was a spokesman for each of those religions, because he had no religion. Matter of fact, this is what he said about himself. He said, I am neither Christian nor Jew, neither Persian nor Muslim. I am from neither the east nor the west, neither from land nor water. My place is what is, without place. My trace is what is, without trace. I put aside duality. I have seen that the two worlds are but one. I see the one, I invoke the one. He is the first, he is the last. He is without, he is within. Anyway, he was somebody who spoke to the realities of the world, of the spiritual realities of the world, but did it in such a way that he totally honored the leadership of all faiths, because he recognized that each one in their own way represented these principles. He continued to be so important that the Turkish nation in 1995 co-authored this book, which is called, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this right, Divan-i Kabir. This is a book that captures approximately 1/4 of this particular issue of poetry that he shared with people. He shared 44,000 verses, and he didn't write them, he spoke them. They just flowed out of him, and people recorded them, and now they're being translated into English. But the Turkish government had co-sponsored the publication of this book and gave it to every representative of a nation in the United Nations. Every nation was represented. They got one of these. And so the United Nations declared 1959 as the year, 1995 as the year of tolerance, as the year of tolerance. I wish Rumi had been alive to go with the book, because somehow the world has slipped out of that mode that we were in at that time. But I mention that with you because of his tremendous gift that he has given us. He was a Muslim scholar. And I want to share that with you because I think it's important. He knew Muhammad's teachings, and yet he had no trouble with embracing Jesus. In the Old Testament, there was nothing apparently in his consciousness of Muhammad's teaching that has brought forth anything that too many people relate to the Muslim faith. So he was a Muslim scholar, a jurist. He was probably primarily a Sufi mystic. And to top it all off, he was a dervish, a whirling dervish. And that's important because, you know, a whirling dervish do that not just for the fun of dancing, but they do it because it puts them into a different state of mind. And the kind of contact that I think the shamans of the world have, only they use sometimes local medicine to arrive at that state of mind, but they get out of the normal view of life's experience. And I thought of when we were singing this hymn this morning, which I remind you is always an affirmation for our soul. And and Cherie mentioned this, it talks about so many things, flowers where deeper beauty shine, all the things of nature. This was Rumi's stuff, because he was totally immersed in a sense of a love affair with God. And all through his work you find he uses the word friend. Friend. He lived with that sense of being in love with his friend and the works of his friend, which is the world of nature and all people. And that's why Rumi is really known as the love poet, because that was the essence of his work. Well, as I said, my daughter directed me to that book, and I thought, I've had that book. I've had both of them. This is the book, it's called The Essential Rumi, which is perhaps a little easier than his newest one to read. or some of the poetry to understand it, but I've had these in my library for a long time. And I've glanced at them and thought, that room is great, but that's as far as it went. And so after my daughter left, I had an occasion to sit down and started to look at Rumi a little closer, and I realized that this guy is my, I don't know, I started to say cousin. No, he's another wonderful mentor of mine, because he shares two things that are totally essential to my personal ministry. One is that the absolute of life is love. No question about it. If we don't know what else to do with our lives, just start loving. And if you love wisely enough, strong enough, you won't have to worry about what's going to happen next. It'll all happen. Love is, as we sang in our hymns, love is that attracting power that even means attracting money and well-being into your life physically. Love is that which attracts the right people into our lives. But it also attracts places to live. It attracts everything. If you are a true lover, then you are Rumi's cousin. You're with it, because that's what it's all about. But I also found that he had something else that was very special in his work that resonates what I have been very much committed to in terms of helping people to appreciate intellectually what life is about and how it has happened. And most of you have heard me talk about it many times, and that is evolution. If you can understand how we've all got to where we're at, then you can understand really what life is about in terms of a daily basis. It is all about expanding consciousness into a greater vision of love, of goodness, and of your own self-worth and being and of everybody else's. Life is about expanding consciousness, because that's what evolution has always been about. So I came across this poem by Rumi and realized that this was the beat of his soul as well. He said, I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as a plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was man. Why should I fear? When was I less by dying? Yet once more I shall die as man, to soar with angels blessed. But even from angels good I must pass on. All except God doth perish. When I have sacrificed my angel soul, I shall become what no mind e'er conceived. Oh, let me not exist, for non-existence proclaims in organ tones, to him we shall return. Now the first part of that poem that I just read you clearly evidences what we have shared from the Teilhardian view, that consciousness, which has been present in the universe as the Christ idea, has been driving evolution. And first it produced the minerals, then it became the plants, then it became an animal, then it became a man, as our friend said. So I thought, wow, he really was into it. And so I'm thrilled with it. And so that led me to look at and decide to share with you a little bit what it was that my daughter liked so much that he wrote, called The Guest House. The Guest House. Let me read it to you. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if there are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. And remember when he is writing this, he's not writing because he's thought down and said, I wonder what words rhyme together. Rather, he was writing from a deep flow of appreciating the reality of what he has just shared with us. That there is this presence that is always working in our lives to bring to us that which we need to deal with to experience a greater expansion of good in our lives. So as I lived with that, I thought, well, it's true, you know, when you first open your eyes, when you wake up in the morning, there's so many jokes about this, but you know, do you say, oh gosh, another day and roll over? No one here would do that, but, or do you say, oh my God, I got that appointment at 4 o'clock today with that person I can, oh well, you're the guest house and you just let a visitor into the house. Maybe you have 2 or 3 going at the same time, back and forth. But what he said was, don't shoo them out. Or if you wake up and you have some nasty feeling when you wake up in the morning, he said, don't just shoo it out. It's there to be dealt with. And if you deal with it, then you'll find that it serves you in wonderful, wonderful ways. It's interesting that as I had looked at the guest house, I had looked at the poem, but I hadn't put together any thoughts about it yet. And I was waking up in the morning on the day that I intended to put my thoughts together, and I thought about an appointment I had, and I thought, ooh. Do you know what I mean? That's all I thought was, ooh. It wasn't a hot ziggity. I'm off and running today. No, it was a ooh. And so I oohed a little bit over that, and it lingered on with me. And then I started working on this time. I thought, oh, wait a minute. That ooh has come to bless me. The ooh has come to bless me. And so with that, everything began to change. And I began to think, what can I take to this ooh experience to bring it into something less than ooh? And of course, that's the way it worked out. And so does everything else in our life when it works out that way. I just saw Marty Calvert come in the door back there. And I interrupt this important lesson to say that the reason that I have this book is because Marty gave this book to Dorothy years ago. And so thank you, Marty, for bringing Rumi back into my life. I want to move along with Mr. Rumi here and share some other quotes that he gives us that are, each one is a whole lesson, but I'm just going to sort of move through them. The first one is this one. Let lovers be crazy, disgraceful, and wild. Those who fret about such things aren't in love. What's so great about him is he always uses analogies that we can all relate to in our everyday life. Some of his analogies, if you know him, are actually almost pornographic, but they're carried on in all his writings. Nobody bleeps them out because you look at it and you think, yeah, I can see the spiritual principle that's involved in that. So, let lovers be crazy, disgraceful and wild. Those who fret about such things aren't in love. And you know that in times in your life, and I'm sure you've all had it, when you've been in love with a person or something so much that you could care what else is going on. I mean, that's the big thing about lovers, you know, they do crazy things. Male and female lovers tend to do crazy things when they're in love, and everybody understands that. But it helped me when I read that too, to understand somebody that you may be familiar with, Matthew Fox. Do many of you here know who Matthew Fox is? Not too many know Matthew Fox. Okay, well, Matthew Fox is another person who is highly regarded around the world. He sold millions of books, a former Catholic priest, and has made the news for his combativeness with the Catholic Church. He's now an Episcopal priest. But anyway, I had Matthew Fox at the school as our guest when I was in charge of education there. And I loved his work. He had been at the school a year before and done a program there, and I didn't go to the program because I heard a lot of it was all about dancing. Not couple dancing, individual dancing, you know, whirling around. As I read Rumi and realized that everything that I'm appreciating about this man came out of his dervish dancing, I suddenly read, that's where Matthew's coming from. Matthew is obviously also a student of Rumi, and that's why he's incorporated into his programs. But I learned when I had Matthew back there with us that he also got something else from Rumi that relates to Rumi's word, let lovers be crazy, disgraceful, and wild. Because we went out to dinner, and after dinner we were getting back in the car, and he went to open the front door for Dorothy to get into it, and he said to Dorothy, get in this car, you wild and wicked woman. I said, how do you come up with that? Well, Dorothy was a little wild, but... I didn't intend to do this, but let me talk about Dorothy for a minute. Dorothy's sort of like a Rumi, you know, because she's sort of in her own space sometimes. And then that space, she often did things that she was famous for, and that is that she would invite almost every waiter to become a Unity minister. And the gentleman that have learned that is being considered for being the new CEO of Unity School is a fellow that I worked with, and we're both vice presidents back there. And he was being interviewed. I learned that during his interview for this present CEO job, he said, well, you know, it's Dorothy Pierson that told me that I should become a Unity minister. And one of the board members said, yeah, you and 1,000 other waiters. So Matthew recognized in Dorothy that she was a little wild and wicked. I don't know where the wicked came from because I don't know all that happened there. Okay, so I love this one that Rumi gave us. And again, you could take this in so many different ways. He said, love's secret is always lifting its head from under the covers. Here am I. Shall I do that again? Love's secret is always lifting its head from under the covers. Here am I. I choose to take it, the realization that love is everywhere. You know, all you have to do is lift the covers, and there it is. Here am I. Because again, when you give out love, you're going to get love back. May not be instantaneous, but it'll come back. Because it's always right there under the cover. He said, be empty of worrying. Why do you stay in prison when the door is wide open? Move outside of fear thinking. I didn't tell you this, but in case you're not familiar with him, he lived in the 13th century. This is modern day metaphysics, psychology. Be empty of worrying. Why do you stay in prison when the door is wide open? Move outside of fear thinking. Then I love this one. Lovers don't finally meet somewheres. They're in each other already. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere. They're in each other already. Recognizing that which attracts us to another is because what you're attracted to is in you. It's there already. It's, of course, true in terms of a couple relationship, but it's true in life in every way. Then I like this word, because it's so simple, but it speaks what I've shared in our lessons so many times. He said, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. Sell your cleverness, you know. Now let's see, we're going to figure this out now. We're going to ramp up our sales program. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. Nobody's done it that smart before. Well, that's one way to do it. But he said, sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment, which is, I am open to the universe. Because it really knows the best way to handle every situation, whether it's a business situation or whether it's a personal challenge or problem. The only thing you have to do is you got to tune into it. How do you tune into it? How do you tune into it? All the lessons I've given you, how do you tune into it?
Hello.
Huh?
Prayer and meditation. Listen. Shut up and listen.
Okay, you got to fall in love with God with all your heart and soul and mind. Remember? Love God with all your heart and soul and mind. If you love God with all your heart and soul and mind, you're tuned in. You listen because you're so full of God. And that's the whole essence of Rumi. And the reason I wanted to share this Sunday with him and perhaps turn you on to reading more Rumi is that he had a love affair with God. I mean, that's why he whirled around as a dervish. It wasn't just to get into that other space of mind. It was because he was just so intoxicated with God. And I can't say that I've even approached that consciousness, but I do love God. And when you love God, you do look at the little lizard there on the ground and you say, hey God, how are you? Or there's something growing out in the tree back here when I was waiting out there by the fountain area. There was some sort of I don't know what it is. It looks like a small pineapple growing out of the tree. Anyway, I just looking at it and realizing the wonder of God in that little thing. We're surrounded by this essence of God. And, as we said, and it's all within you. So that then carries us to a whole other lesson is, how much are you in love with yourself? If you don't love yourself, you don't love God. Because what's right at the essence of your being is God. So, sell your cleverness, buy bewilderment. I love this. There are 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the earth. There are 1,000 ways to kneel and kiss the earth. And that's more of that consciousness of recognizing the humility that goes with having the true relationship that you have with God, of knowing it's all God. You love yourself. But the fruits of that love is not something for you to say, how great I am. It's how great God is. How great God is. You're going to love this one. Out beyond the fields of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Out beyond the fields of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. Meaning, that's where we belong. Out there in that field where nobody's wrong, nobody's great, or right. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. Everything's in the flow. And the more I approach everything in life with that sense, things are going to work out from that inner presence that is in everybody, even the one who seems to be wrong is going to contribute to it. That's the field that we're all going to meet in. I'll see you there. We're not into judgments, and we talked about that recently. Only a couple more, but every one of them is a sermon. It's too bad I just wasted at least 6 sermons here. I love this one. There is a fountain inside of you. Don't walk around with an empty bucket. I think that one's going to stay with you. There's a fountain inside you. Don't walk around with an empty bucket. You got it all. You don't have to go out and get it. It's in here. Because what's in here? God. How do you get in touch with God? You love God with all your heart and all your soul and all your mind. Then finally, this one. Well, no, excuse me, I already read that one to you. But I'll read it again. Let lovers be crazy, disgraceful, and wild. Those who fret about such things aren't in love. So, as we conclude our little visit with Rumi, I give thanks that his spirit is the spirit of our unity work and of this ministry, that we truly do come together, because I know, whether I get you to verbalize it or not, that you truly have a love affair with God. That spirit, that presence that is within you, that is realer than anything you will ever deal with in your physical world. And it will be with you forever. That's what Rumi meant when he was talking about evolution. He said it all came to man, and then he would die to man and become something more, and finally ending up in God. And he didn't mean, like nirvana, that he would lose his personal presence or sense of individuality, but rather that he would come into that total realization of his at-one-ment with that God presence. Let's close our eyes for just a moment now and feel the spirit of a soul like Rumi, who has touched the lives and is continuing to touch the lives of people around the world of all cultures. Rumi's from an area that is perhaps the core of one of the greatest challenges we have in the world today, Iran. That was his home. No blessed presence, we give thanks that the spirit of Rumi lives in our hearts and minds and in millions of souls. We give thanks that this spirit is helping to heal the nations, to heal the hearts and minds of people everywhere. Thank you, God.